Just think about how far we've come in almost 7 years now. Think about how, if you told somebody 6.5 years ago that 9/11 was an inside job, everybody kind of instinctively would go, I've had a bad feeling, it's kind of weird, but why? But still, you were seen as somewhat of a kook. And then 3 years after, when they did polls, the majority of Americans believed they were being lied to. A huge minority believed it was an inside job. That's when a pollster's calling you on the phone. They've done studies showing that people tend to go with the establishment line in a poll. So if 4 years ago 36% said we believe the government did it, probably double that. I've talked to a lot of pollsters. I've conducted polls. I've paid for them with Zogby and others. And it's more like 60 plus 70% believe it's an inside job. And that was 4 years ago. Now they have polls where 84% believe the government's lying about 9/11. And then it comes out they have been lying about 9/11 the whole time. You know, they say it's crazy that the government could carry out an attack like that. It's too complex. It's too big. But guys in a cave, now they can do it. And then you go through all the evidence. So think about all the people that have gone public. German defense ministers and an Italian president and high-level members of the Japanese parliament, and Willie Nelson, and Charlie Sheen, and of course Governor Ventura, and the best actress this year, 2008, and hundreds of scientists, and engineers, and architects, more and more, and then they publish in prestigious scientific journals, and are proving that the buildings were blown up. And at every point, you know, the debunkers say, you don't have any scientists, so they give them all these scientists. Well, you don't have any engineers, give them all these engineers. Well, you don't have any physicists, give them all these physicists. Well, you don't have any papers scientifically showing it. Here are the papers. Well, they're not peer-reviewed. Here, they're in all these peer-reviewed prestigious journals. Well, you don't have any eyewitnesses, and all these videos of firemen and police going, they said get back, they're about to blow it.
Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
All right, guys.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up.
And then BBC and CNN all at the same time say the exact same thing. Building 7, Sullivan's Brothers, fell completely, a total collapse, and its own footprint. They look behind them and it's still standing.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details.
And I mean, thousands of things, on, and even young aides in the bunker with Cheney under the White House going, it's 50 miles out. Comes back, it's 20 miles out, it's 10 miles out. Does the order still stand? Of course it still stands.
I wanted to focus just a moment on the Presidential Emergency Operating Center. You were there for a good part of the day. I think you were there with the Vice President. And we had that order given, I think it was by the President, that authorized the shooting down of commercial aircraft that were suspected to be controlled by terrorists. Were you there when that order was given?
No, I was not. I was made aware of it during the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon. There was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Does the order still stand? Of course it still stands. And we know what that order was. That order was a stand-down order. 2 months before, Dick Cheney took the power from the generals and the admirals and their designates. They'd always had it since World War II, had it since NORAD was set up in '57. They took it away and said, you can't shoot planes down anymore. I have to give the order. 2 months before, they were taking the levers out of the control of the Air Force and the Army.
Months before 9/11, on June 1st, 2001, Dick Cheney ordered then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld to issue this order to NORAD and the Pentagon. The document revoked their standing orders to shoot down errant or hijacked aircraft and instructed them to stand down until they were given orders by the President, Vice President, or Secretary of Defense. Then on 9/11, NORAD and the Pentagon waited for over an hour while the attacks were taking place for the orders to defend America that never came.
How much more obvious does this have to get? So here we are 7 years later. Almost 7 years later. And there are all these prominent scientists and people coming forward, and all these famous people. And people say, well, who cares if somebody from Hollywood or Willie Nelson goes public? Who cares about them? Well, these are icons that know they have a lot to lose. They're showing courage. They're showing solidarity. They're standing up. This is like a new civil rights movement or something, where people are out confronting. And We Are Change and 9/11 Truth and Truth Action and all these other groups of young people and middle-aged and old folks all coming together from Corpus Christi, Texas to New York City to Montreal, Canada, to Berlin, Germany, the Netherlands, London, Japan. They're going to press conferences. They're going to events. And now I've seen other people who aren't 9/11 Truth about other issues, the war and dollar devaluation and oil prices and the North American Union. Other groups are forming with their issues and going in front of the politicians at these stage town halls where they make you sign a pledge. At all the Bush rallies where you have to sign a pledge that you're going to support them and clap and not boo. But the news says a town hall meeting. Well, people are going and messing up those staged events. They're going and showing that they're staged and fake and a fraud. Think about how exciting this is, that the people in the model of 1776 are going out and are engaging these New World Order creeps and their minions and their media whores, and we're finding out that they're not gods. They're not supermen and women. They're afraid of us. They're upset. They flip out when we ask them simple questions. They flip out when we bring up issues. They're going to pieces. And that's the key here. The New World Order is smart. They have a lot of managers. They study human activity. They have a lot of money. They print the money. But they don't have our hearts and minds. They don't have our acquiescence if we don't go along with them. And where the people go, they have to follow. And so this explosive action of the people going out and physically getting in their face is such a beautiful thing, and it is changing the reality. It is bringing and injecting real issues into events all over this country and all over the world, and this is the beginning of the real revolution that I believe is going to bring down the global slave system known as the New World Order.
Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politic. George Bush is way worse than Bin Laden is. Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politic. FBI, CIA, the real terrorists. Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politic. George Bush is way worse than Bin Laden is. Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politics. CIA, FBI, the real terrorists. You got to watch what you say in these days and times. It's a touchy situation, a lot of fear and emotion. September 11th, televised worldwide, suicide planes falling like bombs from out the sky. They wasn't aiming at us, not in my house. They hit the World Trade, the Pentagon, and almost got the White House. Now everybody walking around patriotic. How we gonna fight to keep freedom when we ain't got it? You wanna stop terrorists? Start with the U.S. imperialists. Ain't no track record like America. See, Bin Laden was trained by the CIA, but I guess if you a terrorist for the U.S., then it's okay,
They try to make us think we crazy, but I know what they doing. They trying to put us back in slavery. Check it to get on welfare. You gotta get your fingerprints. Soon you gotta do eye scans to get your benefits. Now they got them cards to swipe. Ain't no more food stamps. Should've seen it coming. It's too late to get amped. And everything got a barcode. so they know what you got when you got it and what you still owe. You seen them projects lately, you better watch it. Why they got us surrounded if money is the object? Why do you satellites to keep track of the criminals? Why they put in jails and school? Is it subliminal? Cameras everywhere to protect us from one another? Or is it the undercover disguise as Big Brother? And equal freedom of speech is limited. Mad leaders done spoke up, and look at what these crackers did.
Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politic. George Bush is way worse than Bin Laden is. Know your enemy, know yourself. That's the politic. FBI, CIA, the real terrorist.